Welcome, guys. This is an episode of Storytime with Stef, and I'm excited to be here. I actually wasn't even planning on coming on Storytime with Stef, but I was on a call earlier today, and the person was just reminding us of the importance of dreams, of goals, but also of storytelling. And so when I heard that, I was like, you know what? It's not like there hasn't been anything happening. It's more so just been that when I choose a story to come and share for story time and stuff, I want there to be a message, a moral, something to it. But I actually decided that I want to tell you guys about my day on Thursday last week. So, yes, it says to hang on, but honestly I'm gonna leave this up, so even if no one joins me live, I'm still gonna go ahead and share this story time with Steph story. And it's super powerful. I don't think I'm gonna cry. Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna cry, but if I do, listen, I'm human, and with emotions and feelings and all that good stuff. So also, disclaimer, I am just outside my house and there's a park nearby. There's many people who done like turbo and all this different stuff to their cars, so sometimes it's kind of loud, but we're gonna get to it nonetheless. Welcome, guys. So last week Thursday morning, I was actually at a funeral, and the funeral was for a 4-year-old who had been diagnosed with cancer and who unfortunately had passed from the cancer. And so my mom and I attended the funeral, and it was about an hour away from our house. So we get in our cars, we left around, I want to say 10 o'clock in the morning, and we drive over to the location of the funeral, and it was going to be held at the funeral home. And we're there, and it was super well attended. A lot of people came to support the family and just really hold up their hands at this point in time. And after the funeral, we get in the car, and I look at my phone and I see that my friend, who's the family member of the little girl who just passed away, she had called me. So I called her back and I was like, hey, I was just about to leave. I see that you called me. And she's like, yeah, I forgot to give you something. And I was like, okay, no worries. Now, this friend literally lives like 2 hours from my house. So the fact that she was somewhere in the vicinity, I was like, you know what, let me catch you right now before you head home. And she said she was going to a specific bookstore. So I was like, okay, no problem. Let me look up the address. I'll meet you there. So my mom and I, we drive over to this bookstore. And of course, every time like I see like an independently owned bookstore or even one that's corporately owned, I'm always interested to know how people get their books there, because I now have a book. So I decide, I get the item that my friend was giving to me, and I decide I'm going to go inside and speak to someone at the store. So I head inside, and there's this super helpful individual who helped me. And I asked him, number one, it was a Christian bookstore. So I was like, hey, do you guys have any French Bibles? Because I've been needing a French Bible for a couple months. And I just figured, you know what, since I'm here, I might as well ask. And he's like, yeah, we do. He walks me over to the location where they have them. And I take a look at some of the different options that they have. And I hadn't even brought my like wallet inside, like it was still in the car. So I went back to the car. And I said to my mom, you know what, I'm actually going to see if they have a French Bible that would be good for me, and like the version that I'm specifically looking for. So I go back to the car, I grab my wallet, and when I come back, in fact, before I had even gone to the car, I was just telling him, welcome. Before I had gone back to the car, I was just letting him know that I was interested in finding out how to get my book in their store. So he tells me how the process works. He tells me to contact the manager, and he also mentions that there's a publishing house right next door. So I was like, oh, that's perfect, because I've actually been looking for like a publishing location that's more local to where I happen to be. And so I was able to get the French Bible that day. I was able to find out that there's a publishing house right next door, find out how to get my book in that particular bookstore. And last but not least, as I was checking out, of course, he sees that like I have a French Bible, so most likely I speak French. And he's like just asking me questions about it. And so I was like, yeah, I have a YouTube channel and this is what I do and different things like that. And he's like, oh, I have a friend who also creates Christian French content, and he's always looking to connect with other people. So I was like, oh, that's perfect. So I provide him with my Instagram information so that he can connect me with his friend who I'm now connected with. But I just thought it was so interesting how I had literally ended up at that store kind of by accident because my friend forgot to give me something, and I got 4 different things that I had been needing. Found out about the publishing company, got the French Bible, made a connection within like the Christian Francophone world, and there was one more thing. Oh yes, found out how to get my book into that particular Christian bookstore. So that was really, really cool. But here's where the story kind of shifts into what I wanted to talk about today. So I have an aunt who lives not too far from where the funeral was held that day, earlier that day. And so I had told her earlier in the week, I'm actually going to be close to your house on Thursday. And so she's like, okay, no problem. Let me know after like the funeral, after the services, and come by. So as we're leaving the bookstore, I call her and I tell her where we are, and I say we're probably going to be there in like 20 minutes. So we get to her house, and I say hi to my grandfather who's out in his garden. My grandfather's so cool. He's literally 95 years old, and he has the most amazing, beautiful garden. But anyway, so I greet my grandfather out in the backyard, and my aunt decides that she wants to go grocery shopping. So I'm like, okay, I'm here, like I have the car, like let's make this happen. And before we do that, she says, I actually just want to stop at someone's house before we head over to the grocery store because it's her 100th birthday today. So one of her neighbors, someone who was just a couple houses down actually, it was her 100th birthday. And so my aunt had some roses in the backyard. She clipped some of the flowers, put them together in a bouquet, and before we headed off to the grocery store, we stopped at this lady's house who she just calls Grandma. I don't even know her name, they just call her Grandma. And so we get to Grandma's house, and my aunt first comes out of the car. And while my mom and I are sitting in the car, her daughter arrives, and so I back out of the driveway so that she can now like take the spot where I had been. And after I do that, I'm just like parked on the street, and my aunt is there, you know, talking to her, gave her her flowers, wishing her happy birthday. And so after that, my aunt is talking to her for quite some time, and she like points to the car and says like, yeah, that's my niece and my sister, they're in the car. So we decide to get out, and Grandma had come out of her house, and she had been sitting on the bench just outside of her like side door or front door. And so we come out and we all sing her happy birthday, and she's just the cutest little thing ever. And it was just such an interesting morning I had just had, because first part of the morning was a funeral for a 4-year-old, and then a couple hours later, I want to say like within 2 hours, I was meeting for the first time somebody who was turning 100 on that day. And so I was just like, wow, like look at life. And one of the things that, or not one, but the thing that she said that just really stood out to me, and I think honestly is probably going to stand out to me for the rest of my life, is we sang her happy birthday, and she was so cute, singing along with us. But after we sang her happy birthday, she said to us, you know, I hold no one in my heart. I pray for everyone and I wish them the best. I mean the best to everyone. And as she said that, tears came to my eyes, and it could have been for like a myriad of reasons. It could have been because the week leading up to the funeral had just been a crazy one just for me personally. It could have been because I just came from the funeral. It could have been like a whole bunch of different things. But when she said that, tears came to my eyes, and I looked at her This she's probably maybe like 5 foot. Like she's not a like a super tall woman, and by the time you're 100 you've probably like shrunken a little bit. But here's this little woman with the whitest eyelashes I've ever seen, who's happily singing happy birthday to herself. And after we do that, she says, I hold no one in my heart. And I just thought about the week that I had had, and I thought about just all the moments where I could have chosen to keep either offense in my heart towards someone or to not forgive someone for having done something. And I looked at her and I was like, wait, hold on. Like, you got to 100 and you forgave everyone? Like, everyone? That's crazy to me. And I honestly know that that's just God, because there's no way that you can get to 100. So that's literally 100. And let me add this too. She's a black woman. She's a black woman who is now 100 years old. And if we just look at the landscape of what's taking place in our world right now, and still the horrible treatment that black people experience in 2022, 100 years ago, imagine that. And so she's lived through so many different world events. She's also lived through her own personal experiences. But that's 100 years of potentially people betraying her, people betraying her trust, people hurting her, different experiences happening. And she chose every single time to forgive. And that was just powerful to me. That was so, so powerful to me. And there's some lessons and there's some moments that we go through in life where it's like after the fact that we recognize, oh, that was a lesson for me to learn. And there's some things that happen, and in the moment you're able to identify, no, like, no, God's actually speaking to me now. This is a lesson he wants me to receive now. And perhaps that's probably why tears came to my eyes, because I recognize this is actually something God wants me to be aware of now. You're not going to get to 100 and have the amount of peace that this woman appears to have if you refuse to let it go. If you refuse to let people go. If you refuse to, I guess what I'm trying to say is exactly what she said. So not having anyone in your heart. So that was what I wanted to come and share. And that's going to speak differently to different people depending on where you happen to be. But in that moment, I knew for a fact that God was literally saying to me, Stephanie, you see her? She's 100. She's seen a lot. She's experienced a lot. Everyone's story is different. I know that. And there's going to be different levels of things that we go through, levels of things that of our pain and just, but we're all going to go through life and we're all going to experience something. And at some point, we're going to choose, like, am I going to hold this person in my heart? And I don't mean hold them in my heart like I love them. Like, hold them in my heart like I just don't really like you type of holding in your heart. But yeah, so my encouragement is pretty much the lesson that I not entered into, because it was already a lesson that I was in at the time, but it was like a reminder. You got to let it go. You have to let people go. And even the most difficult experiences that you've been through, as you choose to forgive, as you choose to release it, you actually let yourself go. You think you're letting the other person go, but you're letting yourself go. You're letting yourself be free to be unhindered by bitterness and by anger and by rage and by whatever it may be. You're letting yourself go. So hopefully you will let yourself go. And hopefully if you get to 100, you also will have no one in your heart. My name is Stephanie, and this was Storytime with Steph. I am complete and beyond that. If you're new to this page, I do have a book where I talk about themes like forgiveness. It is called Trust, Moving Forward When You Don't Have All the Answers. And you can get all the information just by heading over to the link in my bio and by checking out the book. It may be for you, it may be for someone you know, but of course, if you take a look at what other people have said, you'll be able to better identify that. And of course, you can send me a DM. My DMs are open. But outside of that, I hope you guys have an amazing weekend. And yeah, hope you have an amazing weekend. Take care.